I'm Alexander Bell, inventor of the modern day smartphone thong, as well as tech rules and attention intelligence. I'm a keynote speaker, and we're going to talk an awful lot about technology, I think, today. And this is B with Anna Brand, when Brand met Bell.
I love the name Alexander, but I was going to call my son Alexander. Sorry, just going totally on tangent, but the reason that we didn't was because I was convinced everybody was going to shorten it to Alex, which is still a lovely name.
Wow.
But I just thought, I bet he goes through school and he just get nicknamed Alex, and Alexander will never get used.
Well, what's wrong with Alex?
No, but I love the name Alex too. I genuinely do.
Clearly not, because you didn't go.
No, I do genuinely. But I just thought it's such a waste of Alexander. He's never going to use it, is he? But you clearly do.
It's completely, for the reasons you've said, nobody has ever called me Alexander. None of my family.
Really?
Yeah, never had it at school, never had it. I like the name, obviously.
Yeah.
But nobody's, so you're absolutely right. Nobody would have ever used it, and they never do. But obviously for me, the topic that I speak on in technology, like, it's the easiest icebreaker that I've ever had to use.
Yes.
At those, networking events. What's your icebreaker? What's your opening gag? Well, mine was always named after the invention of the telephone, so that's why. But now it's become, it is part of my keynote. It's part of the topics, part of my content as well. So it is the brand, and I think again it's that it kind of slightly elevates you a little bit. If you've got a fancy name, so there's another speaker friend of mine called Henry Coutinho Mason, really fabulous name.
That's such
and
a
it's
good
half
name.
Brazilian and all the rest of it. But to look at him, he's like the Guess Who. He couldn't be more British and white and not Brazilian. And
that's so.
So his image is so alien from us, and he says this. So I'm okay saying it. But the reason why he uses the full name is because it just elevates him slightly.
Definitely.
It makes him sound interesting.
I was about to say, what does he sound like? So if you spoke to him on the telephone and you knew that was his name, and then you saw him in person, would the three disconnect completely?
No, I wouldn't say they disconnect, but he comes across very much as a Henry rather than a Coutinho Mason.
I love that.
But it's all part of the act, isn't it? It's all part of the brand.
Yeah.
It's whatever you can do just to try and move. It's not about being not you, but it's about being just a little bit more than you, I guess. There's, again, some great advice that I got early on in my sort of speaking career was, it's not about being inauthentic, but it's about being 110% you. So it's just that dial it up to 11.
Absolutely.
If you can get to that point, it's not about saying dial it up to 25, and suddenly invent this person that you're not. It's about saying, how can you just take yourself up another notch? And that's where I think you can start to get to the sort of the real magic when you're delivering.
Definitely, and I think because don't a lot of people, when you talk about personal branding, they all seem to think that, because I used to say to people, it doesn't mean that you've got to become Elton John. You don't have to have this
unless
kind
that
of
is you, and that's fine.
Yeah, unless that is you, definitely. But you don't have to become something that you're not. But it's like you say, it's just sort of turning up the volume a little bit.
Yeah.
Where people went through the phase of dyeing their hair purple, didn't they? When it became more of a personal brand, was more of a, people were understanding the importance of it. And I found that loads of women were going out, were thinking that, I'm just going to dye my hair pink or purple and that's going to be my brand, and or I'm going to wear, but it was something that wasn't them necessarily, or it was like a forced, I'm going to do something to forcibly.
I mean, it does work. You're right. Now that you say it, I've seen it a lot, and it does work if they got pink hair and their website's pink and the logo's pink and everything about them is pink and they wear a pink suit. Like, fine, go with it.
Yeah.
Pick a theme and run with it. But yeah, equally, if they don't like the colour pink, or if they don't like dyeing their hair, then it's a step too far.
Exactly. And you don't have to wear your brand colours either. I had this conversation with I've had this conversation loads of times. People are like, I know, but I need to dress, you know, in that colour because that's my brand colour. Like, but you don't have to dress in your brand. Yeah. Mine's like a turquoisey bright. I don't know. I'm never gonna wear that colour. It doesn't. We digress. Let's talk about attention intelligence instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Focus.
Let's just talk about your tech rules and your attention intelligence, and then let's just flip it a little bit and get and I had to think over the last few days. I was kind of sort of trying to flip the subject a little bit and think, right, I think that would be a cool thing a way to think about it. So talk to me about your attention intelligence and your tech rules. They're kind of separate but also work together.
Yeah. So the reason I sort of not the reason I came up with it, the reason I started thinking more definitive about my relationship with technology was because I've had a sort of a long career in tech, big lover of tech, always, you know, Mr. Gadgets, right from when, you know, mobiles first came. I had a pager before I had a mobile. You know, I was one of those kids who saved up all his money and bought a pager, you know, and thought I was the coolest kid on the block.
I was going to say that was a fashion accessory, wasn't it?
Yes, it's bright blue, yeah. And it was like, well, what's the reason of having it? Well, I don't know. It's just a cool thing, isn't it? So I had the pager. I was, you know, first one to get the mobile. You know, all of that. Always all over technology. Loved it. And then in my sort of career, I've had various different businesses. But after my first business, which was in design and build exhibition stands, that's a total curveball. Which if we want to get into that, we can. But after that, I had an opportunity to work with IBM and then with Google and sort of really got into the tech space and fell into kind of VR, virtual reality stuff off the back of that, and had a spin-out agency from Google focusing on creating 360 sort of degree virtual tours, VR stuff, did some things with Warner Brothers. So always been a huge lover of technology. But when the narrative changed in that industry to the metaverse, we remember the headlines of the metaverse is coming, it's going to take over everything, it's going to replace in-person meetings and exhibitions aren't going to happen anymore because we're all going to be in the metaverse. I was like looking at it going, but why would we want that to happen? Like, why is the industry trying to force something to happen on society which is not really that beneficial? And so, you know, I was speaking at various conferences at the time and started to have this sort of questioning narrative, and everybody else was like saying, why are you shut up, why are you talking about that, we're going to sell it to them anyway, so just keep quiet about it. But it made me really question, whether I wanted to be a part of that or not. And whilst I love the technology, I love the possibilities, I love the fact that I can connect with anyone, anywhere in the world, almost at any time. I also don't love the fact that it totally dictates my life. And, and then it all culminated in the second lockdown. And everybody had their lockdown epiphanies. We'd gone through doing a Joe Wicks workout every day and drinking less, to then drinking more and hating Joe Wicks, and then questioning, what life was all about. And so my version of that was when our eldest, Dexter at the time, got all excitedly, came to me and said, I've been thinking about Christmas and I know what I really want. I want an iPhone. And
How old was he when he got?
He was 7 years old when he asked that question.
I think mine were about the same.
And it totally floored me, just caught me off guard.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't prepared for it. I haven't even thought about them having phones. We dealt with the games console, the Switch issue, the sort of that year. I called in the big guns. I got Santa to write a letter that came with the Switch, which had Santa's 10 Switch rules.
I love that we just give the shit to Santa. He can deal with it.
So, and I've got this on video, so it's amazing. It's about an 8-minute long video, and they all excitedly opened the present, and they weren't expecting it. They'd said that they wanted it, but they thought it was a no from us. So all excitedly they opened the present, and then with it is this scroll, and you can see Dexter kind of does this. And then he starts like reading it, in half sort of, it was probably about still 5 a.m. or something ridiculous. And he's like half reading it, and he reads the entire thing. And it's like, it was probably Santa was a bit ambitious as to how many rules were going to be followed. But it was all things like, maximum time limit on there. You've got to take care of them because Santa and his elves can't repair broken controllers and things like that.
Wow.
You got to make sure that your rooms are tidy. Your mum and dad have the final say. All of those sort of things. So we dealt with that really well. And
Be honest. Did you stick with the Santa screen time?
So
be honest.
Dexter was the perfect baby, perfect child. He's straight A student. He's just a gorgeous human being. He's the type of first child that sort of eggs you on to go and have more, and then you realise when you have more that was a fluke. And it was a complete con. And so he sort of, not religiously, but he did stick to those rules. Preston, who's his younger brother, who's the middle one, we have 3, absolutely didn't stick to any of those rules. And he's the one who has the much more sort of addictive personality. He's the one who has the sort of I can see it a mile off. He's now 8. His relationship with technology needs to be managed at a micro level now, whereas I think Dexter is, I don't know, he's just wired slightly differently. It doesn't affect him the same way. So he absolutely stuck to Santa's rules. And I think that was probably the foundations that got me to think about sort of what tech rules could be.
Yeah.
And so when Dexter asked for his iPhone, it floored me. I was like, right, this is where I need to go all in. Started doing the research, the classic dad'll fix it mode came in, looking online, and there just didn't seem to be that much help around sort of digital boundaries with kids and raising kids with technology. Mm-hmm. There were a few books, but most of them were American, and most of them were sort of like naughty step super nanny territory, which I wasn't really on board with. So I sort of wondered why that was. Why wasn't there this plethora of gurus, in sort of the UK talking about this stuff? So then the more I thought about it, the more I just realised, well, I'm named after the inventor of the telephone, so there's an opportunity there to combine my sort of love of speaking and something to do with this topic and the inventor of the telephone, and sort of try and figure something out from there. So that was really the foundations.
And you figured it out quite well?
I'm getting there, I think, yeah.
It's working really well.
I mean, initially, I thought I was just going to become a millionaire because I'm named after the inventor of the telephone. So I remember ringing up Jeff Ram, who phenomenal Northeast speaker, absolute speaking legend, and saying, Jeff, I've got it. He's like, who's this? I hadn't spoken to him for about 10 years. Jeff, I've got it. Right, what is it? Well, it's just Alexander Graham Bell, isn't it? What do you mean? I said, well, he invented the telephone, yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about phones and our relationship with phones and everything else. And he said, right, well, I don't think anybody's going to pay you to be, an Alexander Graham Bell sort of expert, but I can see where you're going with it. He didn't want to put me off entirely, but equally he kind of wanted to bring me back down to earth a little bit and say, nobody's booking Michael Einstein, just doesn't happen. So I had to sort of, figure out actually what was my narrative and what is my take on it, and that's a hook, that's a part of the keynote. Yeah. It's a bit of fun, but actually there's more important, elements to it, and that's when I sort of created the idea of tech rules and attention intelligence.
So in theory, your kids must be amazing with them.
So
exactly.
So Dexter is now
30
11.
minutes a day.
Dexter's now 11. He's, he knows that he's mentioned in every keynote. He's pretty much the opening
does he
story.
Love that, though?
He hates it.
Does he?
Because there's a line that I use, which is the fact that he sheepishly replied. I don't know why I've used this word sheepishly, but that is just his personality anyway. And I remember, and he remembers the conversation, and he was sort of a bit taken aback by my response, because I think he just expected me to be, oh, absolutely, welcome to the club, here's your phone. So he was taken aback when I sort of said, they're dangerous, they're addictive, you're not having one, blah, 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 blah. But he says he wasn't sheepish. And I said, well, I think you were a bit sheepish about it. And so we've got this thing where he hates the fact that I'm telling people.
I still have that now. Sheepish. I'm 47 and I still have that when my mum's be like, and she was, she said this like this. And I'm like, I didn't say it like that. There's something about it when your parents say, no, I didn't. They always make me out to be something,
Yeah. Oh, he's going to rebel at some point. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
As a result of me using him in my keynotes.
Yeah.
He says he's going to sue me as well at one point for defamation of character, which.
But us, and I do this as well. We tell this only because we love the stories and we love our kids so much. But we do tell the same stories about our kids.
Yeah.
The only difference is his is in a keynote now.
Yeah, he's.
But my mum tells the exact same stories about me all the time, like in first school, when apparently I was so angry that she'd brought the camera because I told her not to bring the camera and I didn't want her to bring the. And during a school play in first school, and you're very little then, and I waited for everybody else to leave, and my class went and I stayed on that bench, and I didn't move until everybody had left, and then I stood up and shouted at her across the hall. She tells that story every time, but it is quite funny.
Yeah, it was because they're such defining moments, not necessarily for the kids, but for the parents. Like it is, they are your world.
Yeah.
And like literally that moment, I may have manufactured it into a great story to tell on the keynote stage, but it was that moment that actually got me to think outside of sort of the world of me in terms of the impacts that technology was having, and that was the light bulb that went off, and it was down to him. So he's 11 now, so he's just going into secondary school. So the whole phone gate has been very much a heated topic of discussion, because my wife's a teacher, secondary school teacher.
Oh, so does that mean he's not allowed to take his phone into school?
So yeah, they have a no phone policy anyway.
Well, ours do too, but
they still take them, of course they do, and there's but the thing that Lee, my wife, said about them, which surprised me, is she said, the phones are not the biggest issue like in our school. In fact, they're probably a non-issue in our school. Because the policy is you're not allowed to be on your phone. If you're caught on your phone, it gets taken off you. You give it back at the end of the day, 3 strikes and it's taken off you. You're not allowed to be seen with it at all. Not allowed in lessons, not allowed in break time. They haven't gone to the point where they've got these pouches that they put them in. But effectively it's the same situation. So it's not a school issue. It is in some schools, I think, but in a lot of the schools it's not a school issue. It's an outside of school, it's a home issue, really, more than anything.
Yeah.
And so when we were talking about it, and I was kind of on the fence of saying, well, I'd rather him just get, an old school sort of Nokia device or a flip phone or something, and she's like, no, he will be targeted, for that. Absolutely, 100%.
Oh, she's so right though.
And I can't argue against that. And there's a big movement at the moment called a smartphone-free childhood, and their intentions are admirable. They are trying to say, well, look, if we can get enough parents together, we can all sign a pact that says we're not giving our kids smartphones until at least 14, no social media until 16. If we can get enough of us together, then they'll be in a safe community. I get the vision, I get what they're trying to achieve, but until they get to that point, every child who's used in the first, because I think they're up to about 300,000 packs now. Sounds a lot. Spread that out across the country into the schools, it's like 0.2% in each school. So it's basically 1 or 2 kids in the year 7s that are going in.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're telling me that those 2 kids are not going to have a hard life, the fact that they're the only ones without a phone. So I'm not prepared to make Dexter a scapegoat, for another story in my keynote, which would be a brilliant story. But I can't go there. And I totally get that. So actually, when you start to really think about this, there has to be this balance between sort of giving in and caving into the expectations of the world and the normality of technology, and then finding your own balance and having your own resilience. Because I think if you take a bunch of kids and don't allow them to have these devices at all until they turn 14, well, what's going to happen when they turn 14? They're going to go mental, because it's going to be like, I've lived this sheltered life, and then suddenly, bang, wow, what is Instagram?
Yeah, exactly.
They're just going to go from 0 to 100 in a day, basically.
And I think there's other issues, other considerations around that as well. So one of the reasons I gave in to giving my son a phone, because he must have probably been about 7 or 8 or whatever when he first mentioned it, and I was the whole shock, horror, my son can't have a phone and all, and then all of his friends all of his friends had one, or most of his friends had one. So there's, and I know you can't get your friends have got one, so you can have one too. But that is a consideration, whether you like it or not. But then there's also the safety thing. I thought to myself, actually, he can't get in touch with me. As soon as he did get one, and he could now get, there's all sorts of reasons he rings me on the way home from school. Oh, mum, this, or mum, that, or and maybe there could be anything. But there's the fact that there's a safety thing. He can get in touch with me if he needs to. And I've got the tracker now on his phone. I can see where he is constantly. School trips, I know when they've left, when they've got back. To me, I'm so used to knowing that and being able to look on my phone at any point. But there's that, as well as obviously so many other considerations why they potentially should have a phone, and also limiting the need to learn technology, because that's the way. In my opinion, I think that if you keep your kids off all devices, then
you can't do it. Show me a person who's done it successfully and doesn't have a kid in therapy for the rest of their life. You just can't do it, can you?
I know that we took, actually that was a few years ago now, I can't really use, I'll have to speak to them now and find out. We took Ollie round, he's also 11 now. We took Ollie to theirs and stayed there for the weekend, and Ollie had his little kid's iPad thing, and she was absolutely obsessed with it, because she wasn't allowed anything like that.
We don't watch TV during the week, one of those
things. She wasn't she wasn't that bad, but I do know people like that.
Yeah, I do. I don't have anything against them. I applaud them. I wish I had that ability and that influence on my kids to be able to prevent that, but it's just not happening.
But they did play with she allowed them to play together on the iPad for a little bit. And to get her off the iPad after that half hour or whatever it was complete meltdown. Yeah.
So it's all about balance at the end of the day, and I think being able to teach them limits and have them to sort of almost self-police themselves, that's the ultimate goal that you want to aim towards, where you can't get there unless they've experimented, strayed too far, have their fingers burnt, all of that. Because that's what growing up is all about. It's experimentation, ultimately. So I think that has a really important place to play. And I think actually that's where the schools should come in and, as part of the curriculum, explore and have these. It's like the Channel 4 programme that was out recently with Emma and what's her husband called out of the boy band. Emma Willis and...
Is he the Irish? No.
Anyway.
No, he was in Bastard, wasn't he?
Yes.
I can't think what he was called.
Is it Matt?
Yeah.
Anyway. So there's a documentary. They went into a school. All the kids had to hand over their phones. They all put them in a big cube, and they were locked away for a week, as well as Emma and Matt's as well, and the teachers, and it was a social experiment, and it was really good. Like, every school should run that experiment, because all of the learning that comes out of it, and the aha moments, and basically where they end up is a point where they say, we still need these in our lives, but we're going to monitor them a bit more. We've got greater awareness about the overuse element, and the kids who have, for whatever reason, just been allowed limitless use of technology, those are the ones who really do need the help. They sort of
How old were the kids in this?
I think they were year 9. So what's that?
Is that going in? I'm still first, middle and high
14,
school, so I don't know the 2-tier
Yeah, there's
thing.
not many of those. There aren't any of those left, I think.
No, not many now.
My wife loved teaching the middle school. That was what she
brilliant,
did.
yes.
And then they've all just disappeared. It's a far better system for things like this. So in the American system, which is where the smartphone-free childhood has all sort of stemmed from, it's really easy to have that, because you sort of protect the middle schoolers, and then it's like a graduation to the senior school, and they're all age 14. So then it's like, right, go crazy, go mental, here you go, but we're going to keep you as younger kids until that point.
Exactly.
Like, that can work,
Yeah.
but it can't work over here, because at age 11 they become teenagers because of the school system. So they're immediately into a world where there's 6'4" giants walking around, effing and jeffing, and that's just, by 11 you've lost your children. Basically.
Oh, I know. To be honest, there's 11-year-olds effing and jeffing, as you call it.
I probably was. In fact, at 11 I was probably classed
smoking
as an
in
alcoholic.
So wait, it was a different era though.
It was a different era.
God,
There were no phones, so what else was there to do? I had a pager and a pint. I was happy at 11.
Can't believe you had a pager. Bet you got the piss taken out of you for that as well.
I didn't, because nobody knew what it was. So it was like this amazing device, but you couldn't do anything on it. All you could do was receive, a message on it that somebody would have to send you from a phone. So it was like, come home for your tea was about the only message that I'd get.
Oh, digital distractions. So you were saying in one of your talks about 26%, that you're 26% more productive. Have you got your phone on you now?
I do.
Why?
Because I've got a few little things planned for us later on.
I was just going to, okay. Is it switched off? Is it out of reach?
It's on Do Not Disturb.
Right.
And it's down here, so I can't see it.
Within your vision, though, isn't it?
I can't see it, so it's out. So the studies show. So it was a study by it was a German university and University of Nottingham, and they basically, under lab conditions, they had these exams all set up. People would go in, and it would be locked room, everything else, and they had to complete this exam. And there would be participants who would have phones out. They were just told, just go about how you usually would. So people would have their phones out. Some people would use their phones in order to answer some of the questions. And then they had another group that they said, you can keep your phone on you, but it has to be in a pocket or in a bag. You can't touch it, you can't interact with it. And then they had the third group, which they took their phones off them and had them completely out of the room. And it was the third group that performed, on average, 26% better on the exams, on the sort of the tests and the mental quizzes. And
so there weren't kind of tests that you could Google the answer to, obviously, because
no, it was more the sort of logical thinking and all of those type of tests that they did. So phones out of the room, 26% increase. Phones that were out of sight but still on them was about a 10% increase, and then obviously the ones who had them were the worst performing group.
That's really interesting, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like you say, it's not just turning it off, or sometimes I'll just turn mine over and put it on the desk. That doesn't work. I've just completely lying to myself about that.
Yeah. It has a small impact, but it's still...
But I think if you can actually reach it without leaving your chair, then it's too accessible.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's still sort of in your zone. You can sort of still feel almost the interference from it. Yeah. It's got to be basically out of the room. essentially.
But then the only thing that removes that ability is when you have kids and they're in school, especially, or they're out with their friends or whatever, then you can't switch it off fully, because you've got the fact that they might call, or the school might call if they're in trouble. And that's the one. Or am I just using that as an excuse to not switch it off?
I think you play the numbers of the amount of times, emergency times, that they actually get in touch with you. Is there somebody else that they would then get in touch with as well that would solve the issue? But I think ultimately you're never going to get to a point where you can just completely remove and go back to a piece of paper and a pen, and really get to that sort of deep focus mode. Because actually, even if you do that, and there are some people that have sort of organisational set limits. So there's one of the huge banks had a very strict policy where if you were on holiday, your emails were, you would cut off access from your emails, you would cut off access from your work phone, everything was just switched off. You're on holiday, that's the policy. That actually created more anxiety for people, when they were on holiday, because they couldn't access their emails and stuff, because they're thinking, well, what if something happens, or, oh my God, what if they didn't get this that I thought I'd sent, or so, you're solving one problem, but then you're potentially creating another problem. Yeah. So in your case, there you could remove a device, but then you'd be so worried about missing that one potential call or message that's needed, that all of the positivity that's been created over here has been totally removed. So it's just about trying to tread that sort of fine line, that balance, and that's really everything that I try and do and inspire and talk about, is more about having sort of a general awareness of technology, rather than saying it's black and white and this is what you need to aim for, and you should take your phone out of the office in order to have a 26% increase. The studies show that, the science proves it, but it's not practical for 99% of people.
Yeah.
So it's about trying to find ways that work for you and just being more intentional.
And it makes sense what you're saying about going on holiday, because how everybody says, like when you run a business, you run a small business, and you've got to have that time where you switch your phone off and you've got no contact. But everybody knows that when you run a small business, the last thing you want to do is not get back to somebody. Sometimes you might have to get back within 24 hours, and that's just life. So you couldn't even potentially switch off for a full weekend, but it's all right to okay, then you're just going to check in once a day, so that if you do have that thing to get back to, then you're not then replacing that with anxiety of what you're potentially going to miss. It's
like back to the kids and the family thing. People say, all the time, we went on holiday, we took the kids, to here and spent an absolute fortune on them, and all they did was sat around the pool on their phones. You hear that all the time. How do we stop that? And it's not about stopping that, because that is their world. If that's what they're used to, then taking them on holiday, you're still taking that person with them, and so all of their habits and their typical lifestyle comes with them. So it's not about saying it's all or nothing. It's about saying, well, actually, why don't we just try and have an hour where we say, we're going out for a meal, or we're going to go for a walk down by the sea, or whatever it is, and we're all not going to take our devices, and actually a few weeks before, let's start planting the seed and start doing that together. And it's just dealing with reality, really. And that's kind of the same with work and our distractions and everything else. It's not about saying, well, why don't you just, check your emails once at lunchtime and then once at 3 p.m. and then email's not going to ruin your life. Well, yeah, that's fine until your boss says, or your biggest client says, why haven't you got back to me immediately?
Exactly.
Or you missed this or you missed that. So it's just about dealing with the complexity of life, but with half an eye on the fact that there are some serious negative implications of technology that do ruin, elements of our lives.
Yeah.
And that's where I try and get to. Rather than saying, this is what you need to do, is about me saying, you need to think about what you can possibly do to make the situation
and how you can implement that into your environment whatever that environment
and that's
is.
what Tech Rules is. Tech Rules is essentially a blank page for you to design your own tech rules. I can give you loads of ideas, you can take inspiration, but it's about taking control and ownership of your relationship with technology.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Information overload. Have you heard the term infobesity?
I have.
Do you not think that's the best word ever?
Yeah, it's a great way of visually describing what's going on. I liken it to the post. So there's a bit of sort of content when I start talking about emails, and the fact that on one hand, email is one of the greatest inventions, of all time in terms of efficiency and communication and everything else. But it's also the biggest creator of anxiety, of time wasting, of anti-productivity that's also ever been created. So I try and sort of reframe emails that we think about it as sort of a second-class stamp, rather than thinking everything is like, special delivery. It should be, the standard is a second-class stamp. We're not sure if it's going to get there. It might take a couple of days. We don't quite know the timescales. Don't really know if it's going to get read or opened. That's the way we should be thinking about email. Because the way we currently view email is, it's like the infobesity. It's like the postman is at your door all times, all the day, knocking. So it's like the Amazon deliveries. We're now getting multiple Amazon deliveries every day. It's ridiculous when you think about it. But imagine if that was your email. You would have this queue of delivery drivers, blocking up the street, trying to give you your. It's too much. It's way too much.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same with, with online, with social media. It's way too much for us to actually consume. There's no way that you can possibly keep up with all that information and all that posting, and it is too much. But we can't help the draw of feeling like we potentially can catch up, because actually that sort of that dopamine hit, if you like, of getting to the end or clearing your inbox if you ever clear it, or even just sort of clicking refresh and then having no new emails come in, that can be enough of a trigger for you to feel sort of satisfied. For me, clearing out the spam is like the it's like the decluttering, achieving inbox zero, because I'm awful with email. Once a year I declare email bankruptcy and I archive everything that is in there. It's just gone.
Mine's terrible. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands.
So try it with me. Declare email bankruptcy, archive everything. It's still there, so you're not deleting it.
Okay.
But if you archive it all, you'll get back to zero. You'll do it at sort of New Year, so you can start the year afresh. And then it's not a big deal.
Well, every time I look at that note, or when other people see my phone with the thousands and I don't know, it's an insane amount, and people look at it and go, "That's actually making me feel sick. Will you deal with that?" I'm like, I can't, because there's what, like 20,000 or something on there.
Yeah.
But actually, I thought that I would have to somehow either delete or go, I don't know. But actually, I can just archive that and then just not have to worry about it. I think I'm going to do that and go back to zero.
Yeah, you'll only temporarily get back to zero, but that's the only way. It's the same for me, because everybody's wired slightly different. There are some people who, have an amazing email management system and they treat it like there's a laundry system, which is a great technique. It comes in and you essentially treat it out of, do I fold it, do I put it in with the colours, or do I, basically put it in the bin? And so there's and there's courses, and I've done all the courses and everything else, but I just can't deal with it. It's just not part of who I am.
I'm good at emptying spam. I empty spam almost every day.
That's why, because we feel that by doing that, we're keeping up with everybody else who's got the perfect inbox. So, but it's a complete fallacy, because really, why are we even bothering to even think about there's something useful in spam?
Exactly.
There isn't.
I know, and isn't it that if I do leave that spam for a couple of weeks, just one time, there will be that email in there.
But if it's that important, somebody will send it again,
Yeah.
or they'll phone you about it, or they'll follow up, or whatever. And that's my whole sort of thinking around email. Is, to me, every email is like a second class stamp, because that's the time it's going to take me to deal with it and get back. And it does drive people mad. I've lost business because of it, absolutely.
I was going to say you must have, because
somebody used to say to me in one of my previous businesses, "Oh, you've got at least £1 million worth of work in your inbox," and it's probably absolutely correct. But the problem is, I'm never going to be able to, get on top and manage all of that. So there's no point beating myself up about the fact that there are opportunities in there.
But then you've also got to think about it this way: of somebody has been decent enough or kind enough, or to want to offer you, to want to give you their hard-earned money, and you've just been, I'm asked to read that email.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's just, again, it's about
on your
it's just about ideal customer profiles and all of that kind of thing. It's working with people that that you can work with, and there are certain people who, if they get annoyed because I haven't replied the same day, that's only going to manifest itself in other ways and other ways of working. That's either going to annoy me or it's going to annoy them. So it's probably best that we don't work with each other anyway. The very best person who I've ever met dealing with emails is Richard Branson's PA. She is phenomenal.
Oh, well, I bet she is.
Absolutely.
You'd have
out
to be.
Of this world.
What is it that's so...
Well, she's handling everything on her side, but she's also handling most of his, because he's dyslexic. So he'll do some replies, and some of them he'll just send, but most of them go through her and then Helen, and then she deals with it and corrects anything and then sends it on. But how she's able to... So I was in negotiations with him and his team over some projects, and just how they were able to deal with that level of communication is, when I'm, such a small dot in their overall priorities and everything else, I was just absolutely blown away.
Does she just deal with... Is it just her deal? He must have...
He has multiple PAs.
I was going to say, he must have, even just for the emails. Yeah.
But but that's why it's different. It's different styles of work. She's wired in a way that is so efficient and organised and everything else. She probably couldn't go to sleep, knowing that she's got inbox and all the rest of it. Whereas I can sleep perfectly sound, knowing that there's £1 million in my inbox that I'm never going to get hold of.
Do you have that ability to... I can sort of just pretend things like that don't exist, and that's how I just get on with it. Just, I know that there's all those emails, but they're probably not... Well, they won't be important. I'll have went past them and thought, I need to reply to that. Mark as unread, mark as unread.
Star it. We'll star it a different colour because you think somehow that's going to make a difference.
No, it doesn't.
None of it makes a difference. And this is why the only way to feel any kind of relief is to declare email bankruptcy. Do it over Christmas when it's really not going to impact anything.
Yeah.
So over Christmas, do it, archive the lot, and then start again, and then let it build up again.
Has that ever been... So you can just access it, can't you? So there's no negative.
It's just clearing all of the unreads.
Yeah.
Because if you're at a point where it's over 1,000,
it's way more than that.
You're physically not gonna be able to sit down and go through all of those unread anyway. So you may as well wipe the slate clean.
Yeah. I'm going to do it. Yeah. I'm definitely going to do it.
There you go.
Obviously, I've laughed about your full Monty story, and but that got me. You told this story, and then you said if people had phones, then it would have been really different. You wouldn't have just done it for a laugh. It would have then been... Actually, it would have been really stressful, probably a bit like anxious about it, because it's not just a laugh anymore. You're going to have to tell the story now so that people know what we're talking about.
So it was back in 1997. So I was year 7, so it was my first year in secondary school, and there was a school talent show, and I remember we just saw the poster, And me and sort of a couple of my mates, we were just thinking of ideas of what we could do to enter. I can't remember who it was who said, "Oh, why don't we enter?"
Bet it was you.
Probably was. And so we were thinking of ideas, and it was that year that the Full Monty had come out, and we grew up in Rotherham, so Sheffield was the big city next to us, so it was, it was the big news. Everybody knew somebody who'd been like a...
How old are you when you're
been in the film.
In that year, how old are you?
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 11?
Yeah, 11 years old. But it was just the big news story of the area. So we got a copy on like VHS, and we were like rewinding that end scene and playing it and like literally trying to figure out all of the steps. Now obviously the way that it's filmed, it's not just one long take. So it's really, we had to sort of make bits up as well. So it was ridiculous. I've got an older sister, so she was like roped in, and her like friends came in and was like trying to figure out the moves and stuff like that. So it was a real, like, we put a lot of time and effort into it. But because we were only 11, in the film they have security guard outfits. That's where they get the uniform from. And they have those security guard hats. Well, there was no eBay back then, so you couldn't just buy, a security guard outfit for an 11-year-old, which I imagine you probably could now on eBay.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be allowed to do that scene now.
Yeah, probably. So we couldn't get hold of those. So one of my friends' dads was a builder, so he got us all hard hats. So we had, and again, they were way too big for us. So we had these like wobbly hard hats on that were like this. But the reason why we needed a hat is because we knew we couldn't do the full Monty because we would obviously get into trouble. So somebody, must have been one of my sister's friends or somebody who was like, in drama or had their wits about them, said, well, if you have a hat, you can have a second pair in the hat and you can pull that pair out when they do the bit where you cover everything. And that's how and so we did that with the builders' hats.
Were the parents not like, was that not a bit of a
No,
gasp?
it was just there were no parents in the audience. It was just a school audience, thankfully. But
It's almost worse than it was just
probably. But because we were only 11, the hats like covered our entire waist like perfectly. So when we did it, and we took the hats off, and it was fantastic performance. I'm sure it really wasn't, but in my head, it was. The deputy head walks in at that point, looks up on stage, and it looks like we were naked because obviously the hats covered the entire waist. And so he shouted, cut the music, and said, right, get them off the stage, get them off.
Honestly.
And so everybody starts joining in, going, off. So then we lift up the hats and obviously still had another pair of pants on underneath. So we were all right. We didn't get into too much trouble. But it was just such a laugh. Like, we had so much fun like doing that, and it was just a real feel good, no nonsense thing. The only negative that came out of that was because I was playing the I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the Lunchbox Has Landed character in the Full Monty.
Yeah.
He got kicked off the filming for the recent series because I think he'd revealed himself to a member of the production team, and he was booted off the
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think he's called Hugo. Anyway, so he does the point where he slides on his knees and he rips his shirt open. So that was my part. So I had to slide on my knees and rip the shirt open, which I did. But where I did it was right in front of a girl called Stevie. And after all was said and done, the next day, Stevie was telling people that me and her were now a thing. Now, Stevie was pretty much the bully of the year. Aww. She was like hard as nails. Like, you knew. Even
so did you just accept you were a thing?
Even as boys, you knew not to go anywhere near Stevie because she just beat you up. She was absolutely hard as nails. So I was petrified for about a week, and just thankfully she moved on and went after somebody else after that. But that was the only negative thing that happened. But if you imagine if it happened today, like that was 1997.
Yeah.
Smartphones didn't exist. No social media. No cameras on phones. You know, they didn't even have colour screens back then. It was Snake in black and white, and that was it. So it never even crossed our minds that it would ever be captured. It just wasn't even in our head. Whereas now we would be doing it to perform it for a phone and for social media, because you know that somebody in the audience would film it. You know that it would make it onto social media. You know that it would become the big news. So I don't think we would have done it, actually, because we would have been so petrified of that we just wouldn't have gone anywhere near it. And I think that's really sad that actually today, not just kids, but I think adults as well, don't risk it all for fear of it being captured and for fear of it becoming something bigger than it actually is. You know, it's the same with communication. You know, you write an email and then you read it another 50 times because you're worried about how that comes across. Well, just pick up the phone, like have a meeting in person. You know, that's the way that we used to do things. So the full Monty is a story that I tell in my keynotes, and it's obviously a very funny story.
It's a great story,
visually and everything else. But then I have my own merchandise as well, which I've brought some for you today. So I have these, which are.
It's a tiny. Is it a phone thong?
Which is a phone thong.
That is amazing. Oh my god.
So everybody at my keynotes gets one of these
Love it.
afterwards.
Yes.
And it's got my top 5 tech rules. So this is
this is the best.
There. But attached to it is
actually the best thing I've ever had.
Attached to it is the full Monty foam pants. So the point of those, apart from them just being amazing, is you put those on your phone, and they act as a reminder. So when you're out in public or at a restaurant or with somebody that you care about, or even in a business meeting or with colleagues or whenever you're in a moment where you know that you need to be present and not on your phone, you put your pants on, and they act as a reminder so that when you inevitably reach for your phones, because we all do it, you ask yourself this question: am I giving this moment my full Monty? Or am I about to disconnect and go back into the...
That's just bloody brilliant. I'm literally gonna add, we're gonna add clap soundtrack. That's so good.
But you wouldn't believe the amount of work involved in initially having that kind of an idea, seeing other speakers who have giveaways and, you know, props and stuff like that, and then thinking, right, what can mine be? And I eventually landed on the idea of having a sticker, because, you know, quite a lot of, not that I go to nightclubs or anything anymore, but in the sort of the clubbing scene, a lot of them now make you put a sticker over your camera on your phone.
I've never seen that.
I've been told it. I haven't really been in a club where that's happened, but apparently it is a big thing. So I started thinking, I could get stickers that everybody in the audience could put on their phone with a little motto or something on it. And then I was thinking, that's all right, but it's been done, and they'll just take it off and throw it in the bin.
Exactly, it's going to be a one-use thing.
And so then I started thinking, well, what about if I got die-cut stickers that were in the shape of pants? And so I went to Google Images and obviously put in, you know, pants stickers, or got some very, very strange things that came up my screen. But one of the things that popped up were phone pants. And these were made by Bandai, toy manufacturer Bandai, back when the first iPhone came out. And it was marketed as protect your home button. 'Cause remember, they all had a big button at the bottom. So you could get different coloured phone pants, mobile pants they called them. I thought, that is phenomenal, like that is unreal. Of course, there was only like one version, and it was when the first iPhone came out, so you just can't buy them anywhere. And I eventually found one of these like surplus warehouse suppliers down in like Portsmouth, who obviously just buy a container, you know, and see what's inside. And they had, I think they had about 2,000 of these ones left, and I was like, right, I'm gonna buy them all. So I had to negotiate them down from, I think they started at £1.50 each, I got them down a little bit less than that, but not massively less than that. Bought the lot, and I thought, this is perfect. They arrive at the house. This massive van turns up at the house. It was like somebody was moving house. The amount of boxes that came off, and I was like, right, okay, let's open them all up. Open them up, and I knew that they did a red pair, but they did multiple colours as well. And I thought, well, that's fine. I can pick out all the red ones. It's not a problem. Well, the packaging, it's like a mystery guess. So, it's like when you take your chance. You can't buy a red one. You just have to buy one and hope that it's red. So I start opening them all up. No red ones, no red ones, no red ones. Just these white, horrible, brief, things. And then there was a pair of
white
exactly. And then there was a pair that was boxer shorts. Well, they don't fit with the story either. No red ones, no red ones. I opened up all 2,000 of them. Ended up with about 50 red.
Oh, stop
ones.
it.
It gets better than that. And then when I actually tried to put them on the phone, well, they're designed for the first iPhone. So you can just about stretch them and get some of them, not the boxer shorts, there's no chance of getting those on a modern smartphone. So I ended up out of the 2,000 with because there was a pair of pink ones as well that you could stretch and get those on a smartphone, with about 100 usable.
I like that you added a smartphone.
So I did a dummy test with one of my keynotes and sort of gave them out, and they went down well, but you could see people were physically struggling to get them on their phones. So then I was like, well, the idea is a good one, but obviously I'm going to have to design and manufacture my own. So the work that has gone into creating these, which are my own, I've got the mould, I've got everything there. Like it's blood, sweat and tears have gone into creating these versions.
I love that you have your own product of.
But even then, trying to get them, because obviously you can't find a UK supplier to actually manufacture them at a reasonable price. So I had to go to China. I did try all the UK suppliers that I could find. None of them would come less than like £3 per item. Fair enough. China, they're like 20p each. So I was like, fill your boots. So 5,000 of them come from China regularly. But getting them through customs, they're like, right, what are these? It says rubber pants on them. So why, where's your health certificate? You're like, what? I'm saying, no, they're not full size. They're for phones. Why are you bringing in like pants for phones? Are you selling phones? Like, what's the VAT scam? And when I try and tell them, well, no, I give these away to people. Like, I'm going to get fully investigated at some point. Somebody's going to turn up and go, right, show us what's going on, and I'm going to show us. But I am super proud of them. Like, they are phenomenal. They're worth the effort, because there's certainly no other speaker that has their own phone. In fact, some people have said, do you sell these? Like,
I feel like you should start calling them thongs instead of phone pants.
Well, it depends.
It would sound funnier.
It depends. Some people are funny about, thongs and pants. Some people are more comfortable putting a pair of pants on their phone than a red thong. But they're definitely thong shaped.
Definitely thongs. They're 100%
They're briefs at the front, but they're party at the back.
Brief thong.
There's no getting away.
There's no getting away. Oh my! So I'm off. I've gone completely off. That's thrown me.
It's wearing them that's the biggest problem.
Is that why you've got the socks to match?
Yeah, that's just it's a continuous.
Just one big rubber.
Oh dear. So I wanted to ask you. I thought this would be quite interesting. What do you miss? And it might be something to do with what you've just mentioned, actually. But what do you miss most about having a tech-free life?
Well, I don't have a tech-free life.
As in, what do you miss about when you used to have a tech-free? As in when we were younger.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I had a pager, so I was always trying to be connected. I think the hard boundaries are what would really help now. So if you think back to the early days of the internet, the 56k modem dials. Can you remember the sound connecting to the internet? It'd take about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was
beep, 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 all of that. If you had that, so if you've got, like, I'm not on Instagram, but like my wife is totally obsessed with Instagram. If every time she connected to Instagram, she had to sit through 30 seconds of that sound, like, I think she would live a far more balanced and healthy life with technology. So I think back then we had these hard sort of non-negotiables, which really helped us to sort of stop us from going too far. You know, you had to physically disconnect the phone in order to connect up to the internet. You know, if you were...
And actually, and when that, and I can hear it now, that noise.
Yeah.
But
My impression didn't do it justice, but everybody has it locked into your head.
I don't remember ever thinking, oh, this is taking ages.
Yeah.
And it did take ages, and yet now, if it takes more than 2.5 seconds, what's wrong with the Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
It costs 50p a minute or something.
Yeah.
Oh, it's outrageous.
Yeah. Oh man.
So I think I would like, I think we miss, because everything is so fast, it's so easy now, it's so instant, that our sort of expectations are not really healthy anymore. You know,
Definitely.
Everybody says, oh, what a shame that, you know, this high street used to be amazing and everything else. Well, it's all going well saying that, but how many Amazon delivery parcels have you received, you know, whilst you've been out of the house? Like, we're all contributing to this, you know, sort of consumer divide between society, you know, because everything is so easy. You know,
we want it here, we want it now.
Yeah, there is a real cost to convenience, I think.
Yeah.
But most of us just don't appreciate what that cost is.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we all want the convenience. Nobody wants to go back to...
We're not willing to give it up.
Exactly. What does the first 30 minutes of your day look like? Be honest.
Ooh.
Be honest about the tech.
This is where I start to reveal Dexter's personality. So usually, although it hasn't been very good recently, but we have trained him to bring us a cup of tea in the morning.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
So my first 30 minutes will usually have been a cup of tea delivered to me in bed. I will obviously just have woken up at whatever time the rest of the house is waking up. I will then, usually within 5-10 minutes, then go on to, if it's a LinkedIn day, so I only post, I try not to post, I don't post it all over the weekends, try not to post on a Monday or a Friday. I hate the platform, to be perfectly honest. But I know that it's something I have to do. I don't hate what's on the platform. I hate the fact that I'm being forced to sort of contribute to that platform. And that's, you know, for the greater good. But anyway, have to do it, so it's fine. So if it's a LinkedIn day, then I will. That'll be probably my first sort of go-to, because I'll have had a post scheduled. So I'll check it, write it. I'll try and do like 15-20 minutes of other people's posts. You know, they tell you need to comment on those first. So it's a good like 45-minute thing that I'll do from bed before I get up. But only...
You heard that, didn't you?
Only,
Make sure you've got
only on a LinkedIn day, so you won't get me doing that. You won't get me doing that on weekends.
That's still 3 days.
You won't get. I don't do it every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Although I should, because I did commit to posting 3 times a week, and I haven't been doing that recently. So, but if it's not a LinkedIn day, then I'll have my cup of tea, usually on my own, because everybody else has cleared off.
What about not taking your phone to bed?
I have gone through periods of kicking it fully out of the bedroom, but for me it's not so much of an issue anymore. Like I won't be on LinkedIn. I'm locked out of it after a certain time anyway. So and that's really been my problem area. I left Facebook quite a few years ago because I just thought, I just need out of this.
Why? Because a lot of people, I like having this conversation, because a lot of people say, right, I'm off it, as if they're like off the drink or something like that, like what? And I'm like, okay, like that's fine, I don't mind, but I'm trying to understand, but why? What is it? What's
two reasons I came off it. One, practice what you preach, obviously. Two, I was finding that the content that I was sort of being pushed was sort of not really akin to, like my values. Like I just started getting targeted by, people in scantily clad yoga outfits, doing gym sessions and everything else. And
they're wearing thongs.
Now it's probably linked to obviously my activity online, searching for rubber thongs. I was getting a lot of strange Team U products being suggested, but like I could see it happening, and I was like, I am being manipulated here, and it's not it goes against my values. That was one of the sort of big things that I noticed, and I was like, there's just nothing really good on that platform. I was never a big poster on Facebook either at all, so I wasn't adding anything. Nobody would miss me coming off it. And when I looked at sort of the chats and the friendship stuff, the only reason why I was still connected was for a few sort of work-related groups and communities that I was part of. And again, I wasn't contributing to those, so I thought, well,
fair enough.
Let's just come off it, completely. I was never hooked on Instagram, don't even have an account. Twitter I was for a bit, but that's, since that died and became X, I exited anyway. So I came off that. YouTube's never really been a massive issue for me either. So some of those typical things, but LinkedIn is my nemesis, absolutely. And so I have to have really strict, like, time-bound locks on the app. Can't go on it on weekends. Cuts off at a certain point at night. Yet doing it first thing in the morning on a LinkedIn day is not ideal. But if I didn't do it then, I won't get the benefit from the algorithm. I won't. It's intentional why I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So
I'm not disagreeing, because I actually quite like having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in bed and doing my bit of social media from bed. Yeah. I enjoy that, because then it gets it out of the way, and then I get up and crack on. So I'm the same. Do you think kids today will ever truly get what it means to be present? Or like, has the term being present, does that changed now? Does it need to be changed and amended in sort of today's society, maybe, for what present means?
Yeah, I talk a lot about the moment. So, being in the moment, giving this moment your full Monty, all that kind of stuff. I think the moment still exists from what I remember it to be. If I think back to my sort of childhood and things, and when it wasn't all about online and social media and things like that. Even sort of college and uni, I think my second year at uni was when Facebook started to become popular. So I've got quite a memory of pre that sort of era. And I think that moment still exists as to what it was like back then. But I think if, for kids, for generations who are growing up, where they just can't imagine a world without that, I think it's difficult. But then, having said that, I think there is a pushback that's happening at the moment between the younger generations who are starting to really value, disconnecting and digital detoxing, and it's becoming a bit of a trend, really. Yeah. So I think they understand it. I think they know what it's like to, down tools and be in the moment and everything else. But I think the balance is much harder for them, I think, than it is for us. That's why I deliver my talks to, the older generations, because it's easier for me to tap into that nostalgia.
Yeah, definitely.
Put me in front of, a group of 13-year-olds, and A, they don't know what the full Monty is. they couldn't care less about the inventor of the telephone. They think
No.
it was Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. So that doesn't.
Well, they probably didn't know what they probably wouldn't know what a telephone was anyway.
Yeah, and they definitely don't appreciate a waistcoat. Right? So it's the wrong demographic for me. But it's a really interesting conversation to have with that generation. And I do some work, but not loads. But it's more about not trying to tell them what we had and what they're missing. That's the wrong way, because you can't
always making out that what we had was better than what they have.
Better. You know, like you talk about this, kids don't play outside anymore. Yeah, we played outside, but it won't have all been amazing. Like half the time it would have been, hiding from Stevie Beth White because she said we were an item, or like trying to play a game of football with three of you was never amazing. Like you
Ours
did
was.
it.
I have to. We might have just been lucky, but our couple of streets were amazing. We still all talk about it to this day.
Okay.
All of us. I think there was only me, Caroline. Sometimes Sarah came, but there was only us two girls and the rest lads. And every single day after school until we got dragged in, Tin Can Alley, all that type of stuff. Does anyone know what Tin Can Alley is? Yeah. All the good, but had a BMX, building ramps and all that. Best time ever. Loved every second. Had to drag us in every night. But I know that didn't happen. It would depend where you live. It couldn't happen now anyway because there's too many cars. You can't. It doesn't. That thing doesn't exist anymore. You can't play Kirby anymore because there's cars.
But I think equally, it's not that they're not having fun online. Like there are certain groups and communities, and I think it's probably harder now to fit in than it ever has been. So you've got certainly kids who are isolated and they can find their tribe online. Yeah, and I think that is really important.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
if that's happening, that is a huge positive that technology is enabling in the world. Where once upon a time they would have been picked on, they would have been completely on their own. They would have had a really horrible childhood. Whereas now, it might still be horrible in some aspects, but if they can also find a community that they can be part of, well, that's an amazing thing.
Absolutely, totally agree. Yeah.
Is this meant to be a quick fire round? There's nothing.
This is a quick. No, because these are things that I just thought about yesterday. I thought, what, that would be quite interesting. And I was thinking about digital distraction, and I was thinking, but are there times when digital distraction is a good thing? So I know that, because I was going round in my head thinking, it's really bad that we, in order to get out of our own heads and get distracted, we think that scrolling through social media is doing that. But then I'm watching, I watched your talk, and you're talking about actually, you think that you're getting distracting yourself by doing that. Actually, all you're doing is feeding yourself with so much information, and then lots of questions, lots of things you've got to answer in your own head about things that you're scrolling, and actually that's actually doing the opposite of what you wanted to. But then I thought to myself, but sometimes is that a good thing because it's interrupting that negative self-talk? Yeah,
I think it's so complex. You can be in different states of mind as well. So you can be in a point where you are taking in the information, and there's actually studies and brain scans now that show that your conscious sort of brain is a different part to your brain that's activated when you try and focus on something and have your attention on something. It is different parts wiring of your brain, so it's actually you're in different states. You can be just endlessly scrolling and you're not even really taking in the information. It's just you're in a bit of a zombie pacifying state, and that can be potentially a way of you sort of coming down from a hard day at work or a stress in your life or whatever. So it can be not the best way of dealing with your mental health and stuff, but it can be a way of soothing some of those and sort of just distracting your mind and things like that. So in that way, it could be a positive. Maybe I'd say there are far better ways of doing that. Going for a walk out, in nature, or doing some exercise or whatever else. But actually, sometimes that could be a positive. The other side, if you are taking it all in and you are feeding your brain and getting inspiration, then that can be a massive positive as well. But I think it's about making a decision and being intentional. If you get to a point where it is happening and you're not really massively in control or aware of it, or you are in that sort of zombie state and you're just doing it because it's a habit and it's like a muscle memory habit, then that's probably not the best to have.
I'm definitely guilty of that. At times.
Absolutely.
In the evenings.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, it is. If you've done that, a million times, which you probably have done more so, then of course it is such a natural habit to do. It's like if you do start to, and I urge everybody to do this, start to leave your device, at home, even if it's a little walk that you're doing, or if it's a short drive somewhere, or just start to sort of disconnect and disassociate yourself with having your phone on you at all times, then you do start to tap. It's like tapping for your keys, isn't it? But you'll notice yourself doing it, and then when it's not there, you kind of go, oh, I would have probably lost a few minutes of scrolling if I'd had it on.
But
so
it's that separation anxiety as well, though, that you have to get across, don't you?
God, absolutely.
If you haven't got your device with you and you're out on a walk or whatever, then I'm nervous and anxious about what I might be.
What you might be
missing.
Gotta
just keep pushing through. Push through it. Come back next week and we'll talk about it.
But like you say, it is like an addiction, which leads me on to my next question.
Kind of. I used to use that word, but now I don't use it at all.
Well, I know quite a few people who do use it and genuinely think that they are addicted, addicted to that mindless scrolling, nothing of any importance, but just mindless scrolling. And I thought about this, that what if we treat our phones like other addictions, like it was alcohol or cigarettes or something? And if your phone came with a health warning label, what would it be?
Yeah, well, I did used to have a bit, I don't know if I ever put it in keynotes, but in longer form content and talks and things like that I did used to say that social media is society's cigarettes. Now, I used to say that because lyrically it works quite well together. Social media is society's cigarettes. But I completely disagree with that now, because what I was trying to say back then is liken it to the health warnings, and I used to say that phones should have the same sort of shocking image on the box that cigarettes do. But we're talking about two very different things here. We're talking about a chemical substance that is by its very nature combined with an addictive substance that does kill you basically, and has very sort of limited benefits. Really, you get a bit of a high off the nicotine, and the change in breathing is what gives you some of that high anyway. I used to smoke as well. So, really bad. But to liken social media to that, which is so a list of ingredients and it's pretty simple, and it's the upside is very, very small in comparison to the downside. Social media isn't that at all, because there are huge benefits to social media. There are businesses who exist because of social media. They find their entire customer base, and livelihood through social media. There are marriages that have happened. My marriage wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for social media, because we're not going into that story, but we had a moment, let's just say, and we wouldn't have reconnected if it wasn't for social media.
That's a nice positive.
So again, super positive. So I used to make it too black and white. But
there are some really strange addictions where people are addicted to opening doors. I don't know why that, that's probably not a thing.
There is a phobia or a thing for
but there
printers,
are weird, there are phobias, but I'm sure there are also addictions to things that are not necessarily harmful to somebody else.
It's like people falling in love with, objects or furniture or stuff like that. Like, I'm not saying they're not in love. I'm just saying that it's a bit of an outlier.
Like on Jerry Springer when someone married his horse.
Yes. There are certain situations which are just very different to the people who actually have a heroin addiction and it's wrecking their lives.
No, understood. Yes.
I draw a huge gap think, between them now, because it's such a complicated issue, and it'd be so easy to say, social media has caused, all of this, anxiety and depression amongst teenagers and everything else. It's a contributing factor, certainly. It's an enabler for, certain misinformation or however you want to pinpoint it. Like, it has a massive impact, but it's not the root cause.
No.
The root cause is partly due to our sort of want for that information. Nobody forced us, put a gun to our heads and say join Facebook. Like, we all did it because we all thought, oh, this is new and this is cool.
Yeah.
And, if you look back, and even like the poke button, you remember that?
I've never really understood what that was.
Well, it's outrageous, isn't it? Let's face it.
It's
a way of basically telling somebody that you are stalking them.
Is that what it is?
Well, it was, you've been poked by...
Yeah, but I would get that, and I would always think, well, why? What is that? Why have you done that? Is that somebody like saying like hello, like I'm nudging you, or a nudge? I've never understood it.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it a stalking?
Well, I think I would have been guilty of using it for people who
wear thongs,
who either wore thongs or maybe wanted to see me in a thong, or like it was a way of it was like a wink. I kind of saw it as a wink, but it was absolutely shocking behaviour. Like, why am I sat there? Like, it's just all sorts of right. Anyway, I digress. The point being that it's easy to point the blame at social media, but actually it's such a complicated issue that it's not the same as cigarettes at all, because we're all using it slightly differently. For some people, social media might be the same as a heroin addiction. I'd still argue that it's not, but possibly they are ruining their entire lives because they're just permanently on it. You could argue that the kids who have taken their own lives as a result of something they've seen online, or copying one of these like trends, things, stupid ideas, that goes wrong. You could argue that the impact of that would be similar to, a serious drug addiction, but there aren't that many similarities when you actually get sort of deep into it. So I think putting a warning label, who would be responsible for that? It's not the phone manufacturers, they're just manufacturing technology. You could argue that people creating monitors, should have a label saying there's going to be adult, content that you're going to see on this PC monitor. Like, it's mad when you start to think about it. It's not the phone manufacturers, it's it's all of us. We all have a responsibility to play in the way that technology is.
Yeah. Answered perfectly. Perfect answer. Thank you very much.
But if you'd have asked me a few years ago, I would have probably said yeah. But that was just my partly my naivety is to understanding the sort of the science and everything behind it, but also just being really wanting a line that really worked. That's
because it rhymed.
That's basically what it was.
Alexander Bell, thank you.
We haven't done the experiment yet.
We haven't.
We are running out of time. Right. So, this is a luminometer device.
A luminometer.
Which measures the adenosine triphosphate. Which is basically the bacteria that is on a surface.
Oh my God.
So I have here with me some some medical swabs.
Oh my God.
And we're going to...
Because we were talking about addiction.
We are going to swab...
now.
Put your phone on the table. We are going to swab your phone to see just how filthy the device is. Because, as we say, we talk about our phones, social media, having a lot of crap on them. And we're all guilty of consuming, the crap content.
And actually,
for me,
when do you ever clean your phone?
For me on Facebook, it was obviously Lycra and strange things, but we've all clicked those dodgy links. There's seven worst wedding photos of all time, all that kind of stuff. We're all guilty of it. But actually, the rubber pants, the crap isn't just about the content. The crap is also on the outside of the physical device as well. So this is my luminometer.
Oh my God.
These are the swabs.
Do you in lockdown? I remember in lockdown, I was obsessed with cleaning my phone. Like, obsessed with it. I don't think I've cleaned it since lockdown.
That's the last time.
Yeah. Oh.
That's all right. You can
That's
take that whilst we do.
Okay.
Might be an emergency.
I'm going to tell him that I'm in the middle of it.
Move that.
Hello. You're live on the podcast right now. You actually are. Yes. I'll be finished very soon and I'll give you a ring. Okay.
So,
bye.
Take a sample.
What's this going to tell you? Just how dirty it is?
How dirty I am.
So there's an activator in the top that we squirt in, and it basically picks up all of the residue. We pop that into here.
Oh my God. It's quite scary.
And it gives a countdown from 15. It's going to give us a score to show just how filthy the phone actually is.
Oh, Neil, are you worried?
I am.
Now, going by the manufacturer's guidance, a score of 30 or above would be considered as dirty. So if I went into a restaurant and took a swab of the food prep area, which is what these are commonly used for, if it's over 30, that restaurant would be immediately closed. Okay, your score was 220.
And Neil just never fell off his chair.
This is why I wear a glove to do these swabs. So 223 is
so you've got
score.
223.
Oh my God.
So 0 is good and 223 is bad.
0 is you could eat off it.
Yeah. Would anyone actually get 0?
I have had. I've had 6 before recently. That was last week.
What?
Somebody scored 6.
How is that possible?
No, that's a low score, so that's really good. The higher the score, the worse.
Okay, how is it possible to get 0 and what are they doing? Have they got too much time? They must be cleaning their phones every time they've used it.
Your phone is dirtier than mine. That's what we're focused on now.
I bet Max has been slavering all over it as well.
I think, you have to...
Max is a dog, not a husband.
Right, we've got a good sample there.
Damn, if it's worse than Neil's, then... It'll be 0, obviously.
Of course.
So...
What was yours when you did yours?
Back in here, I'll tell you in a minute. So again, countdown from 15. So 223 is the score to beat. Anything over 30 and you shut down.
Oh my God.
3, 2, 1. 369.
Oh, Anna's a minger.
I'm a minger? Stay
It's been really nice.
What shit?
So yeah,
that's bad, isn't it?
That's pretty disgusting. So our
I feel
phones.
like he's going to go home and shower after being around us too.